Janusz likes to ask AI questions all the time, so I'm going to throw an AI question out there. My wife, we've been married for 14 years now. She will still yell at me that I'm holding the fork wrong.
Like they try to figure out how to possibly make it more difficult for you, yeah?
Right.
And more and
What
more.
would you say, as somebody who's getting ready to start a new language, what is something that people think is a great idea, but it's probably overrated? And what is something do you think is underrated? It's almost like they enjoy the fact that you mess something up. And they get beginning when I first started going to Poland, that wasn't so much a big deal. I was under the care of my wife. I was almost like another child.
You can start teaching Polish like Robert.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
In today's episode, two of my most dedicated students are having a conversation about Poland, about the Polish language, and it's really very interesting to see them. And as you can see now, I'm not reading. My eyes are, all over the place. Maybe I wasn't born to be a YouTuber. That's why I'm a teacher. But I really like being also a small podcaster. But anyway, so um, Robert from Australia and Philip from the USA are going to chat today. I'm also I'm also there, but you will not see me much. You will hear me laugh in the background. Uh, but yeah, so earlier this year, I did podcasts with both of them. So if you want to get to know them better and hear their stories, you can click over here or scroll down and you will find links in the comments below. And now, please listen to my students, Philip and Robert. Let's make history. And Robert, maybe you can start with your first question.
Phil, like I know you've been in Poland many times and you've been in lots of different situations. Are there any situations where you feel culturally different and you feel American and you feel out of place or you feel different?
So one of the things I've actually started having this conversation with some of my wife's cousins who they moved here when they were teenagers and they learned how to become an adult in America,
Okay.
right? And so there's a lot of times when I'm in Poland where how I learned to be an adult in America doesn't translate to how to be an adult in Poland, right? And at the beginning, when I first started going to Poland, that wasn't so much a big deal. I was under the care of my wife. I was almost like another child to my wife. But as you, I'm sure as you know, as you start going there more and more, as you start learning the language, you're like, all right, I want to, spread my wings here a little bit. I want to be a little bit more independent and do things on my own, right? I want to be an adult here. You kind of run up against some cultural roadblocks there where, well, I know how to do this in America. I don't know how to do this in Poland, right? So that's from my end. From the other end, even though I've been going there, like I said, since 2009, I still, in a lot of situations, I get treated like the American, right? Like I'm not just another person, even though I'm sitting there in Poland, speaking Polish, eating the Polish food, doing all the traditions. Oh, he's the American, you know? Um, when a lot of times they will say, "Oh, we need to get a cab. We need to get anywhere. We need a cab. We need to take some kind of transportation." I ask why. Well, you're an American. You're used to driving a car. You're not used to walking anywhere. Situations like that where I feel very comfortable there, but there's just certain things that I butt my head up against, and for my end, I think it's primarily because I learned how to become an adult in America. And that's fine, but it doesn't always translate.
Yeah. I think for me, like the first thing that struck me when I went there for the first time, I always thought that I was very polite, very well mannered, but
Hmm.
the Polish men, like when I first saw it, they blew me away. You know, they rush to open the door for a woman when she comes into the room. They pull the
Yeah.
chair, they take her coat, they kiss her hand. And this was a struggle for me to try and catch up so that I didn't look like,
Yeah.
an imbecile.
There's definitely more formalities there that
Oh, yeah, there
they're
is.
they're they're here as well, but they're not as required here.
No,
And in fact,
no.
some in some places, like like you run into the wrong woman out in the street, you open the door for her, she's gonna be insulted that you opened the door for her. She's like, I can open the door myself, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where over there's more formality to it.
Yeah. And I think living in Australia, that's a struggle for me as well, because it's a very relaxed, very laid back, very tolerant society. And this formality, sometimes in situations in Poland, I struggle with as well.
Right. I still don't. I don't. At the same time, I don't think I've ever spoke formal Polish to really anybody. Like everybody just immediately, when you're in a social situation, immediately we just start using, the informal
Yeah.
version. I've not like I see it all the time on TV. This like, hey, let's now speak informally, and they shake hands or take a drink or whatever. I've never
So,
done that. Everybody just, oh, you're an American. You're probably used to the casual. We're just gonna immediately go to that.
so you never had to deal with officials in various offices or in banks or places without any pole
Every
dates or
time my wife's been with me. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Like we have to, my daughter has, she has a Polish passport. I've been in
Yeah.
offices while my wife has, renew her passport or wedding licenses, those kind of things. And I just kind of sit in the background and sign what I need to sign and nod my head when I need to nod.
Well, I
Because
can
that's
do it.
another tricky thing. There's a problem with that, right? In that again, the formality kind of comes in. I think this goes to one of your other questions where it's like everything is so rigid, it feels like sometimes, where face that. I don't face that here, where like if you're in a government office here, hey, maybe you didn't sign some form right, you didn't fill out, or you forgot some form. Here, the workers are always thinking, how can we resolve this problem right now, right? Okay, I'll just quickly give you the form. You step to the side, fill it out. Don't wait back in line again. Come right back,
Yeah.
and we're gonna get this taken care of. Don't worry about it, that you forgot something. In Poland, it's more like you forgot this form, go, get out of here. Not my problem.
Sometimes it's in Poland, like they try to figure out how to possibly make it more difficult for you,
Right.
yeah, and more obstacles in the way. And sometimes seem to take great delight in doing this to
Yeah,
complicate.
yeah. Exactly that point. It's almost like they enjoy the fact that you mess something up, and they get to tell you about it.
I'm quite used to now, like say panning and using this formal language in appropriate situations, but sometimes I just forget. And like a
Mhm.
few weeks ago here in the street, we met this Polish lady who lives around the corner and we chat to her occasionally. I was there with my wife. And dzień dobry pani Elżbieta, no, and we chatted for a bit. And then I was fine. I was using the formal language and it came to leave. And I said, no, no to cześć, pa. You can't say that. No, it's do widzenia, pani Elżbieto. So,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's the one place I know I probably where I like, speak formally is when you're leaving like a store or something like that. It's always dziękuję, do widzenia. And that's
Mhm.
just kind of burned in my brain now, right? Everybody does that when you're leaving the store. I think I've just heard it so many times that it's not so much that I know to do it, it's a reflex at this point.
Yeah, yeah.
And Phil,
Um,
maybe you can ask a question.
sure. So, Robert, my first question for you is what does your current Polish learning routine look like, and how has it evolved as your level has grown?
Okay, okay. I see my current routine is very focused on speaking. Because that's what I want to do. I want to talk to people when I go to Poland and communicate with people.
Hmm.
So, believe it or not, I speak with people in Poland every single day.
Yeah.
Speak Polish every day, and I'm not talking about with my wife.
Hmm.
On a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, I speak with various language partners that I got in touch with through an online platform here. On a Saturday, I'm very lucky that there's a Polish language school here in Melbourne, and I go to an advanced Polish conversation class every Saturday
Okay.
morning. This goes for
Wow.
3 hours, which is great. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's contact with the language. There's usually 6 to 10 people turn up for the class, and we get on very well. So it's a social event as well, but it's great contact with the language. I have an online lesson once a week as well with Janusz that goes for an
Hmm.
hour. So that's what I do now. But previously, I went through a whole range of different things. I'm sure exactly the same as you. I did Duolingo, I did Babel, then I started watching um, YouTube channels that were focused on teaching Polish, things like Easy Polish,
Hmm.
Polski Zanio, various things like this. And
Right.
then I progressed from that to watching not just regular YouTube things on Polish, young Polish people who travel, just things that are interesting.
Hmm. Hmm.
I started watching TV programs in Polish as well, and usually trashy things like Ukryta Prawda. I'm not
Okay.
sure what this is. It's like I don't know, a pseudo docudrama, but it's very
Right.
good because it uses everyday language. People use regular vocabulary. There's a bit of action, and then they interview people, so there's some repetition. Then a narrator comes along and explains what's happening. So there's
Hmm.
repetition that you don't get lost. And they
Right.
always have, it's called a Kryta Pravda, so hidden truth. So there's always a twist at the end. And when you understand what's going on, it's like confirmation that you actually understood
Sure.
the program.
Yeah.
And then
They
from that,
do you find, like I always talk about this with Janusz, in that as you rise up, the beginning level material is always very easy to find. And obviously native level material is easy to find, but there's like that upper intermediate, lower advanced kind of
oh,
level where it just feels like there's a lack of
that's
material
right.
kind of meant for learners kind of thing.
Yeah, you
And you
do.
almost have to jump from like medium to native. It's a big jump at that
That's
point.
right. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, you reach this level and then you think, well, where do I go from here?
Right.
And I think what you have to do, you just have to make that jump and you start watching things at a native speaker level. And gradually,
Yeah.
sometimes subconsciously, you realize that you're actually improving. And every time you
Right.
watch, you learn a little bit more. But there is that gap, I think.
Yeah. I think what helps now too is more and more, at least here in America, more and more things are appearing, say, on Netflix with Polish language. And
Lots,
they
lots. Yeah.
always have subtitles on that. And that definitely helps. Reading and hearing, even native level reading and hearing at the same time is a lot easier than just listening to it.
Well, I've said that to Janos once, and he told me off. He said, "No, don't do that because you're not listening. You're just reading." Yeah.
If it's if it's English subtitles, then I agree with him. I agree because then I'm just sitting there reading the English and I'm not paying attention. But with Polish
So
subtitles, I'll be listening and then I'm like, what was that word? And I quick look down and I'm like, okay,
Oh,
that's what
okay.
he said.
Okay. Okay.
You have to
so
make an effort.
I think you can do, two things at the same time. So you're either focused on reading or on listening. So ideally, you can first listen and also have the subtitles. So you watch with the subtitles, but then
Hmm.
you're obviously stubborn and you do the same thing. You watch it one more time without the
Yeah.
subtitles. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a type of video that Piotr from Real Polish does where he'll watch a YouTube clip, let's say, right? And it's like usually a TV show in Poland. And he watches the
Yeah.
entire thing, full speed, and then he watches again and he keeps pausing and kind of this is what they said here, this is what they said here, this is what they said here. and he explains it a little bit. And then then he watches it the third time, and then you just notice, just because he went through that one time of explaining a few difficult things to you, now you understand it so much better. So I noticed that in general, even without, let's say I'm watching stuff even without Piot's explanations, watching things multiple times, you will 100%, it'll be more clear the second and third time than it was the first time.
Yeah, yeah. So your Polish is now fairly advanced, fairly high level. So what do you what's your goal? What's your aim now? What do you want to do with the language? Are you quite happy just to sit back and relax with where you are, or
This is the million-dollar question I'm facing right now, right? And so it happens more than just in Polish. It happens in life, I feel like, as well, right? Um, so I reached my initial goals were I wanted to be able to understand my wife and daughter when they were speaking to each other in Polish, and I wanted to be able to communicate with my now relatives in Poland who don't speak English. And I accomplished both those things. And but I still
And now they
not
speak Spanish.
right. Yeah, my wife and daughter are learning Spanish, and now they're confusing me all over again. Um, but the problem is, I know I still wouldn't say and maybe this is a problem only with Polish. I still never say that I speak Polish. I always say I'm learning Polish, right? I don't know if I have enough confidence to say that I speak Polish. Because it always feels like that my Polish is very honed in on those two things, right? And so if I break out of those little niches that I've learned, suddenly you're like, oh, does he actually know Polish? Because it doesn't it's nowhere near the same level. Um, so now it becomes a problem of like almost like motivation, almost drive, where it's like, okay, I accomplished my initial goals. Well, you need to set new goals, and sometimes that isn't the easiest thing. I think I already watched the video from last night from Laura, and she was
yeah,
saying that where you reach that B2 upper B2 level
yeah.
where you want to press on, but it's kind of difficult because you don't have that same burst of excitement, drive, and everything like that that you had when you were starting, when you had these really important goals. Understanding your daughter and your wife is a really important goal. Talking to your relatives is a really important goal. And now you're kind of going for the icing on the cake. And it's
Yeah.
it's it's a different level, it's a different task, it's a different level of motivation. It's also, but it's the same amount of effort, right? They always talk about the curve to get 100% of something. It takes just as much effort to get the first 80% as it takes to get the last 20%. And so
Well,
sometimes you're sitting here asking
wow.
yourself, do I really want to take this on?
Yeah. Because you're putting in the same amount of effort, but you see less and less gain because
Exactly.
initially you have a very rapid learning curve and
Yep.
your knowledge is almost exponential. And then you get to this point, probably about B2, where everything slows down and you don't
Yep.
see the same advancement as you did at the earlier stages. So it's
And
harder to
yeah,
maintain.
and I always say one of the big positives about learning Polish is how excited Poles are about foreigners speaking Polish. It's not like if you learn Spanish, you speak Spanish to, somebody from Spain, everybody does that. It's a big deal when a
Yeah.
foreigner speaks Polish. And so you're constantly getting this huge boost of motivation because everybody's just so excited that you're saying anything in Polish, right?
Yeah.
But then eventually what happens when you reach about this point, people are just used to you speaking Polish now. So
Yeah.
there's not that constant positive feedback loop of, oh my God, you're amazing. You said this in Polish. It's so it's a difficult place to be, 100%. And but like I said, it's like that in life sometimes too. I find myself, I'm 48, where kind of like what I envisioned my life to look like when I was in my 20s, it looks like that now. But I'm only 48. And it's kind of like, well, geez, I guess I didn't set big enough dreams, big enough goals for myself. And now I got to sit here and go, well, what do I want to do next? Everything,
Yeah.
everything on my checklist was checked. I need something else now, because I'm not going to sit here and just do nothing for the rest of my life.
Yeah, you
So
can you can start teaching Polish like Robert.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's yeah, congratulations, Robert, because that doesn't that's not an easy thing
This
to
is a
do.
very informal environment. But what
Uh,
Janusz is talking about is like once a week, I meet up with some of the people from the Polish school here in the pub, and we take it in turns to pick a topic and present a lesson,
mhm.
essentially. But it's
Nice.
interesting. It's an interesting exercise when you have to try and explain some Polish grammar points to people. It's very
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I
I,
really enjoy it.
I I do that a little bit now with I'm sure you know him. You know Vigo's dad.
Yeah,
So he's he moved to Poland I think a year ago finally, and he's been taking Polish lessons. And so we had already been talking anyway since when I'm back when I had the channel. I said, okay. I said, you've been taking Polish for about 6 months, a year now, something like that. And I said, every day we send voice recordings to each other every day in English. I said, every day the first recording I want you to send me has got to be in Polish. And then I'll send you notes about what you got wrong.
that's really good.
And then vice versa. And then once he sends me, he wakes up in Poland, he sends it, it's already sitting there by the time I wake up. And then I'll send him a recording in Polish. And now since his level isn't quite the same as mine yet, then I'll immediately send him an English thing with like a recap of what I just said, kind of thing. And so we've been doing that for 6, 9 months now. And yeah, it's interesting being on the other end of the side, right? Where you're the one going, say it this way, that's sleeping, not singing, because those words are very similar in Polish, just kind of, providing that feedback. But I think as I said to Janusz in the first video, one of the best ways to be certain you know something is to teach it. And so I definitely think it's reinforcing things that I had learned a long time ago that maybe I had forgotten, but now they're coming back up because I'm kind of on his journey as well. So are we on to the next question?
Yes, we
Yeah.
are.
Let me ask one here. Okay, so Janusz likes to ask AI questions all the time, so I'm going to throw an AI question out there. What do you think the greatest strength in using AI in assisting with learning Polish, and what do you think will be its greatest weakness?
For me, I think the greatest advantage is that it's there 24/7.
Hmm.
Whenever I have a question, whenever I want an explanation of why I would use one verb rather than another verb, I can now get an answer to that question with a very thorough explanation and background as to why I can get this instantaneously. For me, that's the best. It's the best thing. It's like almost like having a teacher on tap 24/7.
Hmm.
It's just great.
Sometimes better. Sometimes it can give you answers that, so many times with languages, people are like, I don't know, that's just how it is, right? But AI will give you an answer. Will give you it's because of this and this and this. And if you really want to delve into why these
Yeah,
rules exist, it'll give you the answer.
yeah, it's great. It's like Laura said earlier when I was watching her video today. She's saying these language partners are great, they're absolutely fantastic. But if you turn around and you say, "Oh, so which case is that? Is that doppelganger?" Or they've got no idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
can't tell you.
I remember that same the video. We're like your greatest viewers, Janusz. We've already watched your latest video.
Yeah, yes,
Um,
you're.
I was remembering back when I used to ask my wife what case that is, and how my wife
Yeah,
would always answer is how they learned to, oh, Kogo Chego. That's how she would answer the answer,
yeah.
and I'm like, I don't know what that means. What are you talking about?
Well, I figured that out on my first trip to Poland because my wife said exactly the same. She
Right.
says, "Pomochemo."
Yeah.
What? Where AI doesn't do that, AI will give you a very thorough
It gives you the answer.
explanation,
Yeah.
which is useful.
Yeah, I think
You
one of the greatest assets it'll be as a tool is that the personalization you can use it for. Like, if you're like I think I've said before, a lot of my interests don't line up to things that are popular in Poland or things that Poles are talking about, right? The example I used last time was baseball. But I can tell that thing, hey, make me a podcast about baseball, about American baseball, and it'll do it. you know,
Yeah,
and we know so much about how important it is to be listening to things, to be learning from things that are interesting to you, right? It tickles the brain. It makes it more accepting of the information you're giving it, right? If you don't like horror movies and you're watching some horror movie in Poland, you're going to be so kind of turned off by the movie, you're not going to really bring in any Polish. And so its ability to tailor itself to what you need,
yeah,
um, I think is one
yeah.
of its greatest assets.
Definitely is. On the downside, it's not a real person, and it's not the same as speaking with a language partner that you've
Hmm.
been chatting with for years, and you know about their family and their likes and dislikes, and you develop a relationship with that person. Yeah.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
not even like having an online lesson with someone that you like, and there's a sense of humor and there's some sort of rapport there. It's that
Yep.
that aspect is missing with AI.
I think we've learned a lot of that through, like I said, during COVID. We learned that, hey, FaceTime, Zoom calls, they're great, great technology. They can't replace physically being in the same room with somebody, you know? There's so
Yeah.
many things that we try to replace. I said this to the honors, the real thing with some kind of technology thing, and it's not the same thing. You can look at Google Maps, you can look at places around the world with Google Maps all you want. It's not the same as actually going there
Yes,
and
exactly.
smelling it, seeing it, feeling it, kind of thing. And yeah, I think definitely just listen. Tech is great. Tech provides a lot of things, but it's not a full replacement for the real thing.
Yeah. Oh, you've been to Poland so many times, you know a lot about Polish culture. What would you say is something that Poles value more than Americans and vice versa?
Um, the traditions, definitely. The the like the holidays, the cultures, some even I'm surprised that even like so many of the, let's say, holidays are religious based. And even people who are not religious will still celebrate them the way we've always done it, kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
We're maybe not the same as to the same level as here in America, right? Just sometimes that level of, again, rigidness kind of drives me nuts, right? Where, okay, it's Vigilia. Now we do this. Now we do this. Now we do this, and it's the exact same every year. And I'm like, can we change something up a little? Can we have a little better variety? No, this is how it's always done. Um,
You know,
sometimes,
there's such solemnity and such respect around some of these
yeah.
holidays
Yeah.
that
There's nothing, yeah, I don't want to say anything like there's anything wrong with it. It's just like, I'm sure it's you sometimes, like same thing we were talking about earlier with the rigidness is just we're not used to it. We're used to going with the flow a little bit more this, and especially here, I live kind of near New York City. There's so many different cultures here that you're just kind of like, okay, what is normal for me is not normal for you. And neither one is wrong. It's just we grew up different ways, kind of thing. The
yeah.
basic example of this is how you hold a fork. I learned how to hold a fork differently than
Yeah.
apparently Europeans learned how to hold a fork. My wife, we've been married for 14 years now. She will still yell at me that I'm holding the fork wrong. And I'm like, it's just you learned it a different way. I learned it a different way. Look, we're both cutting the meat. It works. Both methods work. No, there is only one way to hold a fork, and you do it wrong.
You know,
So,
we were talking about holidays before, and
uh,
like I'm sometimes embarrassed because I'll spend time talking with someone in Poland who explains what happens when they go to the cemetery and they buy the
mhm.
candle. You know, they take this so very, very serious, which is
Yeah,
beautiful.
it's beautiful,
And
100%.
then I say to them, "Oh, today's a public holiday in Melbourne." "Oh, you know what? What is it?" And I said, "Oh, it's Melbourne Cup Day." "Oh, what is that?" "No, it's about a horse race." We have another one. We have Grand Final Leave. Oh, that sounds interesting. What's that holiday?
Right.
Oh, it's the day before the football final.
Different level. Yeah. I would say definitely, um they definitely Poles definitely hold on to their history. They know their culture, they know their history to a level that Americans do not know.
Yeah.
Um, and and they take pride. Like I think one of the major reasons why Poles who live outside of Poland send their kids to Polish school is that they want them to keep the language fresh and learn the language and everything. But there's a huge other aspect to it in that they learn about Polish history there, and they want their kids to know this battle was this battle was this happened to us at this point. Poland was off the map for how many years, right? They take to a like a, I've never seen an American with the same level of dedication
No,
um,
it's the
to
same. Yeah, I'm
to
always astounded that the Poles know the dates of every battle and they can tell you
yeah
the order of things. It's just unbelievable.
yeah. So it's impressive. I would say, and if you want to say what Americans value more than Poles, you know, where Poles sometimes holding on to all these older things, like I said, it's a beautiful thing, but it can sometimes be an anchor as well, where, Americans in general will throw away something that they made 5 minutes ago to move on to something what they consider bigger and better. Is it always? No, but is it a lot of times? Yeah, we are focused on what's next, progress, innovation. I think sometimes I accuse my wife too much of looking backwards while I'm looking forward, kind of thing. And not to say either one is wrong or right. It's just it's a difference. We definitely notice. I think Americans a little bit more in individuals than Poles are more of a collective, right? They like to do things together. They like to do things as part of a group. It kind of reinforces the all the things we talked about and everything like that. Where I think Americans want a lot of times want the spotlight shining only on them, and so that they feel special at that point. And it allows us to. I think it sometimes though it gives us more ambition, and that we seek out that that fame, whatever, people
Individuality.
respecting us and and all that kind of stuff. And so I think it feels like sometimes it allows us to go take more chances, to go take more risk, to be more ambitious because we're seeking that reward. Yeah.
Cool.
Let me see, let me find the next one for you. I have the up here. That's your questions to me. Okay. Okay. What is something you wish Poles would learn from Australians? And what is something you wish Australians would learn from Poles?
Okay. Like I said before, Australians are very laid back, very relaxed, very casual, and I sometimes wish that Poles would learn to lighten up. Very serious. You never see walking down the street, you never see a Pole smile. They've always
hmm
got these long, serious faces. And this is very different in Australia, yeah? You walk
Right.
past someone on the street, you smile, you give them a nod, you're out walking the dog, you'll stop for a chat. I think this is very different in Poland. So I'd like to see them lighten up a bit. And I'd like to see them learn from Australians that you don't have to complain all the time. I know people joke that this is like a national trait for
Yeah.
Poles, but it's very true, and it strikes me every time that I go there. Yeah, they'll complain about the weather, they'll complain about politics, they'll complain about prices, they'll complain about the neighbor upstairs or downstairs. And
hmm
to me, this is very non-Australian. Australians are
Yeah.
extremely tolerant, and this doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I'd,
It
I'd,
feels to me even sometimes to the point that Poles don't understand the line between honesty and rudeness kind of thing, where sometimes as a non-Pole, you can be
Is
like,
there a
whoa, that
line?
was real.
Is there a line?
there's, there's like that was very rude to say, but you say it under the guise of I'm just being honest, right? And it's just kind of like I'll give you an example. When we bought this house,
yeah,
we bring people over to see it. The first time people are in the house, Americans come over. Oh my God, what a beautiful house! Oh my God, you're so lucky to have it. This is so great, and you guys are going to enjoy living here. We bring some of my wife's friends over, the Poles. oh my God, look how shitty this roof was built. Oh my God, this was clearly made by an American, you know?
I thought you were going to say the first question they asked you was how much did you pay for the
Well,
house?
that's the
Like
other
it's
thing,
a
right? How
very
much did you pay? Oh
direct
my
as
God, you
well.
paid that much for this? Oh my God, you
That's right.
know. So a little bit, I would say Poles could use a little bit of tact, you know,
Yeah.
instead of just brutal, brutal honesty.
Yeah. And I think I've learned over the years as well to be quite cautious sometimes saying to someone, oh, yeah, shimmers. Because
Hmm.
if you say this in Australia, how you going? I say,
Yep.
oh, great. Oh, really good. How you, mate? When you say this to a Pole in Australia, you can get a 20 minute
Yep.
dissertation on how they're feeling on a particular day and what is happening in their lives. So
Yeah,
should be
I've definitely learned. That was one of the first things you learn is you start saying things like "so suihach" or "yakdam." You know,
yeah.
you'll get a much
Son
shorter
of
answer than
Yes, that's
"yakshema."
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. One
On
of
the
the
other,
things,
on the other side of the coin, one
yeah.
of the things Australians should learn from Poles. I was thinking about this even last night when we went out for dinner. We were sitting in a restaurant. In Australia, restaurants are really loud. I don't know what it's like in America that people can't sit down and talk. They have to
Hmm.
shout. One table
Hmm.
is raising the voice and the other table as well. And this it drives me crazy. I know maybe it's just as you get older, you become a grumpy old man, but I notice this now much more. And in Poland, it's not like this. If you go to a nice restaurant in Poland, it's almost as if you're entering a library and people are
Hmm.
very sedate and very quiet. And sometimes I just wish Australians would be a little bit more Polish in this regard.
That's funny that you say it about getting older because I feel like lately my wife will always ask me, you know, why don't we go out to eat? Let's go out to a restaurant. Let's go. And I'm like, I said, I don't understand the point of going out in a restaurant here in America. I said, the food's not as good as what you cook. I'm like, it costs more. And I'm like, and there's all these noisy Americans here. I'm like, but the difference is in America, usually the reason why Americans are so noisy in restaurants is because the music is so loud. They crank up the music to, I don't know, to entertain you while you're eating. And then
Yeah.
everybody needs to talk over the music. And so it's just, yeah, like I said, yeah, same as you. As I get older, I'm like, this is not what I signed up for. But back to your previous thing, the one thing I definitely miss when I'm in Poland, and maybe this goes back to your when do I feel American is same as you. I'm just used to having random conversations with people on the street.
Yeah.
Or if you're just in a common situation, like, we're standing in line.
Yeah.
You're at an amusement park, you're standing in line, it's taking a little bit, you're
Yeah.
gonna have a conversation with the guy behind you or the
Yeah.
person in front of you. That's just a normal thing to do here. And the only
Yeah.
way you can talk to another person in that same situation in Poland is if you're complaining about how horrible it is that we need to stand in
That's right.
line.
I've experienced this as well. I don't know if you've had much to do with banking in Poland, but you go into a bank and they're very slow, and there's normally maybe half a dozen people sitting in a waiting area. And you walk in, and the first thing you're supposed to say when you walk in, you say, oh, who was last? Okay, so that you
Okay.
know after this person. It's changing
Yep.
now because of a docket system. But it can be very quiet, and then one person will start. Yeah. And it can be, oh, when is this rain gonna stop? And then that's it. They take off and it breaks the ice, and
Right.
everybody's free to complain, and it's like a
Yeah.
free.
Yeah. It's always a complaining session, 100%.
Now, what about we go back to learning
Uh-huh.
Polish? It's something you managed to do. You've got to have some strategies that you've used along the way to get to the level that you're at now. So, are there any skills that you've picked up in the way that you learn Polish that you can adapt or you can use in your daily life?
Yeah, so for one thing, I would say this. On some level, Polish is the most difficult thing that I've taken on in my life. If you in terms of how much time and how much effort I've put into it, I have a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. I have a master's in computer science, and I'm like, Polish is the thing that kicks my butt every time, right? And one of the things that definitely one of the reasons why it has taken me so long to reach the level that I have is that at some point I stopped and said I need to learn how to learn. And
Mm.
I read a lot of books. I read a lot of books, a lot of audiobooks about just how your brain accepts information, how you can get stuff in there and everything. Because I've never really had this problem growing up where like I want to learn something and it's not sticking for whatever reason, you know? Um, so definitely a lot of skills I just picked up in that. One of the other things I've kind of noticed is that we so often people learn a second language in a classroom setting, right? And I think learning a language isn't so much like learning math and learning history or whatever, right? And I've now associated it more with like going to the gym, being in shape, you know, where it's like your habits, your daily habits make the you don't sit there and go, okay, I want my body to be like this. You're better off going, I'm going to just have these traits, have this personality, have this whatever, and then the body is the result of that, right? So it's the same thing with Polish where I kind of learned to switch my focus where, you know, at the very beginning I was like, oh my God, I don't know this word. I was very tense. You know, I don't know this word. I don't know this. I can't say this. Oh my God, I can't say things exactly the way I want. Where now
Yeah.
it's like, well, if something isn't important enough to me and I hear it enough, it'll come in. It'll come in and it'll stick. And if something is I've learned to be more accepting of what I don't know, I guess is a good way to put it, right? And if something is simply, you know, sometimes Janusz talk and I talk about very unique situations that only happened that one time in my life, right? And then all of a sudden there's a bunch of new vocabulary words. And I remember back at the beginning, I would just try very hard to learn those words, but because that was a very one-time unique situation that
Yeah.
might not happen again, those words, because I never hear them, they're never coming up again, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that's one of the skills I definitely pick up is more of a going with the flow and just kind of accepting take what's coming into you and don't worry about the fact that you don't know everything, right? And
And
if you
I would say that like my problem solving skills have improved because of
100%,
like
yep,
you said before, you don't know a word and I say, oh okay, I don't know that ending. I don't know how to use that verb properly. And you have to come up with another way to get your message across or
yep.
another way to say something or make people understand. And I
That is
think
100% an underrated skill that people need
hmm,
when they're learning another language in general, is you're not going to be able to say the things the exact same way you want, like you're used to in your own language, and you need to come up with another way to say it with the words you have. It took me a long time to learn that skill as well. But now it's the same kind of thing. Now I use it in English. Like when I'm speaking to people, you know, people who English is their second language, I can
yep,
sit there and, okay, well, let me say it like this because you're going to understand it better this way.
yep. That's exactly right. Like living in Melbourne is the same as New York. Yeah, it's a very multicultural society. On a daily basis, come across people from a multitude of different nationalities. And if I say something, either they don't know the vocabulary or they don't understand my accent, but I now have the skill that I can say the same thing in 10 different ways
Right,
to
right.
and I think
Yeah.
that comes from Polish and learning that sometimes you have to come up with another.
It is also one of the greatest frustrations. I know when I talked to Janusz after his first round of podcast episodes, he said he saw whole new personalities to all his students because finally we were able to express ourselves in a language we're more natural with, you know. And he's like, you know, we're all always so rigid and speaking little sentences and everything like that, you know, when we're speaking Polish, and all of a sudden now in English, he's like, oh my God, look at how these people tell stories and explain things and everything. It's completely different. And it's definitely one of those frustrations where I'm like, you know, especially when like I said, the goal of a language is to connect with somebody. And when you're trying to make that connection and you don't have the way of saying it, even if it's not, you don't have the way of saying it the way you want to say it, right? And you have to simplify it down. And it's like, the meaning kind of got lost there, what I was trying to say to you. You know, you technically understood what I was trying to say, but it's not with the same effect,
I'm not
you know?
100% satisfied.
Right, right,
That's not me. That's not the way I want to say it.
right, right. Yeah. What do you think, Janusz? You said the it's different hearing everybody speaking English versus Polish, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. Like I was, is this the same person or what's going on? I've been working with these people for so many years and I feel like everything is different. Yeah, so that's why um it's very important to learn certain vocabulary that you can really express yourself the way you really are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, otherwise it's like having two personalities kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
Phil, I don't know if you get the same question that I get all the time, and that's, well, do you speak with your wife in Polish at
Hmm.
home? And my answer is categorically, well, no, we
Right.
don't. And this comes
It's
down to
hard.
just what, yeah, it's just hard. And it's what Janusz was saying as well. Like, I don't know, like English is our language and our relationships based on English. And if I
Hmm.
start speaking Polish, it changes it. And it
Yep.
changes the dynamic. And
Yep.
it's just bizarre.
I don't know how you guys know if yours is purely English, but here it's like a mix of both languages, and it just kind of dances all over the place all the time. Its majority of it is English, but there'll be Polish words in English sentences. There'll be English words in Polish sentences. Sometimes, sometimes words just have different meanings for you. Even though it's the same word, it has a different meaning in that other language. Like the example I would think of is like cheers. Cheers in Nostrovia, right? For me, when I say cheers, that's like I'm at a party. Hey, cheers, right? And it's very positive and everything like that, right? When I hear Nostrovia, it's like you just finished the end of the work week, you're sitting around with your guy friends and you're exhausted, Nostrovia, and it goes more this way versus cheers that goes up kind of thing, right? Same word, completely different meanings. So I feel like a lot of times, like I said, majority in English, and we've tried plenty of times to say, okay, we're only speaking Polish from this point, right? And it lasts like 5 minutes. Always
And
lasts like 5 minutes. And
that's
then
right.
yeah,
Yeah. But interestingly, when we were in Poland, we do actually speak a lot more together in
yep.
Polish because you spend a lot of time with other people and they're speaking Polish, and then sometimes we'll be going back home on the tram or something, and we're still speaking Polish, and it takes me a while to realize, oh no, I can speak English now. We
Right.
certainly do speak Polish to each other more when we're there.
And sometimes when you're in Australia, do you use it like as a secret code that people
Yes,
aren't going to understand what you're
sometimes I
saying?
do. Yeah. If you're in a
That's fun.
situation, yeah, that's it. But there are quite a few Poles in here as well, so you have to be careful. But
You're right. Right. But it's not, again, it's not the same level of Spanish. Like you're speaking, like, especially here where I live, you're speaking Spanish, probably every other person's going to understand what you said. You speak Polish, it's going to be a little bit before somebody understands you. So let's see. Next. So one of the things that greatly interests me about you is that you've been going. When I started going to Poland, all the people that I know, I have been going to Poland from the earliest point, right? Everybody who I've talked to about Poland has always been after me, right? Because I went in there first
Oh,
time 2009, right? And so then when I saw your video with Janusz,
yeah.
and you've been going there since the 80s, I believe it
Oh,
was. So
yeah.
I've seen a tremendous amount of change between just in 2009 and 2025. Every year I go there, I'm like, it's just so different than the last time. Even though I go there every year, even in one year, it's just a tremendous amount of change a lot of times. But you've been going for much longer.
Oh,
So now it's very obvious to see these changes, right? In general, things are getting better. I'll be honest with you, sometimes I worry about that they're accepting too much of our stuff. I'm like, oh, don't do that. That's what Americans do. Don't, take the good positive things, don't take the negative things. Um, but there's definitely some things that I've seen where definitely they're rooted in older times and they're still there.
yeah.
What is something that you've seen that you can obviously say, hey, this is rooted in like the first, you saw it the first time you went to Poland and you still see it today?
Yeah. I would say it's the bureaucracy. I'm sure this love of bureaucracy started during, and it hasn't gone away. Yeah. I remember one of the first experiences, the very first time being in Poland, which was when it was still PRL. It would have been 1988. And back then, we used to use these things called traveler's checks. Maybe that's before your.
I
And
remember them, yeah.
you remember them. And to cash a traveler's check, they already have one signature. And in front of the cashier, you have to sign the check a second time. And I remember going to this office. It was audible. It was like a state travel agency to cash the traveler's check. And I signed the check, and the woman behind the desk looked at it and she says, "Nie, nie." She says, "Nie, nie są identyczne." It's not identically the same. And in the end, we had to give up and we just left from there and we went to the bank and we tried in the bank. But this bureaucracy is just exhausting in Poland. Simple things like going to the bank to change the name on an account or get a peso number, you can write off the entire day
Right.
at these filling in forms. A few years ago, my mother-in-law passed away in Australia. So we had an Australian death certificate, and we had to go to Poland to sort out her affairs. So we had this Australian death certificate translated officially into Polish. We had her will, which was written in Polish and notarized in Poland. And still, it took us over a month to get through this paperwork to allow us to do what we had to do.
Yep.
We had to get this document from a notary that said the notary had checked the will and had checked us out, and we're actually entitled to the inheritance. It's this bureaucracy is definitely a hangover from these PRL times. And some of the attitudes we were talking about before of the people that work in these offices, this mentality is also a hangover from
Yep.
times. Something else is the fact that in Poland, a lot of the time, how you manage in these situations comes down to who you know. If you know someone who works there, if you know someone, then the attitude can change dramatically. And Janusz, there's a saying, there's a way to say that in Polish. Is it to mieć mocne plecy?
Tak, mieć mocne plecy, or just mieć plecy.
Mieć plecy, which means what exactly?
That you know someone who knows someone and they can do whatever you want for you, and you don't have to wait in the line, basically.
Oh. And I've experienced this as well. When we were trying to sort out this business with the mother-in-law's death certificate, we actually had to register the death in Poland, although she died overseas. She died in Australia. And there was only one office in Warsaw where you can do this. We were there in August. It was the middle of the summer holidays. And they said, yes, we can do this, but it's going to take 2 months. And we had like 2 weeks left in Poland. Then we're talking with a friend, and she says, "Yeah, I know someone that works in an office in this place called Legionowo, just outside Warsaw. Maybe
Here
you
we
should
go.
go.
Here we go.
I'll talk to this person."
Tell me no
So,
about it.
so we
Of
go
course,
there,
combination.
and this woman says, "Oh, you're from Australia?" And he said, "Yeah. Oh, my cousin lives in Australia." "Oh, where do you live?" "We live in Melbourne." "Oh, my cousin lives in Melbourne." And it was instantaneously we became part of the family, and the woman would do anything for us.
Yeah.
So we got this document within a few hours rather than within a few weeks. So I think
Okay.
that's applies as well. It matters who you know in various situations.
Yeah. That's one of the things, again, learning how to be an adult in a different country. In
Yeah.
America, it's like if you have enough money, you can get anything done, right? It's about how much you're willing to pay. Over there, it doesn't matter a lot of time. It's like you have to know the right person. And if you don't know the right person, it doesn't matter how much money you have. You're out of luck, you know?
Perfectly
Um,
explained. Perfectly explained.
one of
Yeah.
the things I've always noticed, the same thing with the some of the service people, and I know, like, listen, customer service in general is getting better, but you can see it come out every once in a while. That time throwback to old times. I remember once my wife and I were at the train station, Warsaw Central, and it's overgone a tremendous change. How it
Mm.
looks, it's very modern. It's very easy to get around there if you're a tourist, if you don't speak Polish and everything like that. Um, and so it's gone through this great transformation. But we were there one time and we couldn't find exactly what time our train was supposed to arrive, or when the next. We need to buy tickets. We didn't know when the next train to Białystok was. And so my wife walks up to the woman who's selling tickets, and she's like, "Excuse me, ma'am. When's the next train to Białystok?" And the woman said, "How am I supposed to know?" and and I was just like, I was like dumbfounded. I'm like, "What?" And I'm getting ready to say something, and my wife's like, "Don't even bother saying anything. There's no point. Let's go."
Oh, that's very
So yeah,
funny.
like I said, it's interesting dynamic, and that you can see all this change, this modernization. Everything's beautiful, everything's colorful. You talked about things being very gray when you first started going there. Everything
Yeah,
is so colorful now, all the buildings and all the paintings they have on the buildings and everything like that. But
yeah.
everyone, and you kind of get used to this new modern Poland, and then every once in a while it comes out, the old Pierre all the times comes out and bites you a little bit. Let's see. So I'm going to ask you, we're going to go back to Polish now.
Okay.
Obviously, you've developed a lot of habits,
Yeah.
new habits when you learned a foreign language. What would you say, as somebody who's getting ready to start a new language, what is something that, hey, people think is a great idea, but it's probably overrated? And what is something do you think is underrated?
Something that's overrated, I think, is trying to learn vocabulary. Just
Hmm.
very cold, just with a list of words and trying to memorize them and commit to memory. I think is a waste of time. Yeah. It's a waste of time. You get frustrated, you get bored, and that's one way for you very quickly to lose your motivation. So I don't try to do that at all. I don't think I've
Hmm.
ever to do this.
Hmm.
Luckily, I've got a reasonably good memory, so I remember things, but not doing that. Something something I do, or at least used to do, which I think is underrated, is actually reading out loud.
Hmm.
So would go for, say, a bike ride along the beach. I would stop. I would have a book on my phone, and with no one around, I'm sitting on a park bench saying that, and I'll read out loud. And I think that helps significantly with pronunciation.
Yep.
Shadowing as well. So
Hmm.
like um, a bit like Piotr with his answers, with questions and answers,
Hmm.
just repeating what you hear.
I liked how he said that in those lessons. He's like, "Hey, if you don't know the answer, just listen to what I say and then repeat it." Right. And it's like, yeah, it definitely helped.
Yeah.
I talk about this all the time with Janusz, is that one of my greatest struggles right now is that I
Mm.
understand a lot. Like, Janusz and I are going through a book right now. I had bought a book that I had read in English, and now I bought the Polish version, and now we're reading it in Polish. And one of the struggles I have is that I understand what the words are saying, but I can't say them. Like, my tongue is not used to making those movements, going from this point to this point. And I've got to sit there and, it almost sounds like I don't understand what word is, but I completely understand it. And I'm just like, I can't move my tongue that way. And so over the course of the week, we'll make a list of those words. And it's not so much
Yeah.
that I'm memorizing the vocabulary words. These are words that I'm doing vocal practice with, right? Just practicing, trying to get my tongue stronger at moving in that direction, right? They're just patterns that don't exist in English. And now I have to practice them in the new language.
It's a tongue gym.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so maybe one last question from Robert.
I don't think I've got anything else on the list. I think I've asked Phil anything. I don't know if Phil's got anything left he wants to
So
ask.
I would say this, just to kind of put a bow on the last thing we were just talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm with you. I think overrated. I think depending on apps, depending on, memorizing vocabularies. I think one of the biggest mistakes, I was guilty of this, and I know Janusz says a lot of his students have this problem, is not they'll hold on to something and stick to something until they think they've learned it 100%, instead of just going, I got this good enough. Let's go. Let's move on to the next thing. I think people spend too much time, let's say, trying to memorize the grammar rules.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, read them, get a feel for them so that you can recognize them when they're happening. And in general, the grammar's in every sentence you're going to speak and read and everything like that. It's going to be reinforced through you
Yeah.
just continuing on your journey.
Yeah.
The other thing is, we always point out people are going to understand you if you get the grammar wrong. So I think it's one of the things that kind of holds back also people from speaking quickly is they're like, well, I don't know the declination here. I don't know what's going to be in here and everything like that. And I'm like, they're going to figure it out. It's one of the things that makes Polish easier to understand than it is to speak, and that you can kind of ignore the endings. You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
czerwono, czerwonego. You know it's red. Because the
Yeah,
beginning.
exactly. But that's true. That's true.
But
That's
and
true.
then I think for me, and I think you talked about this in your first interview, one of the most underrated habits is talking to yourself. Um, I go for walks every day, and all the time, or just in general, going to the store, sitting in the gym, I always say to myself, can I describe what I'm doing right now? And I would sit there and tell myself a story. Okay, I just walked to the store, I bought this, I'm walking home now. Right. And you would find okay, well, I don't know how to say this. Okay, then you go home and look it up how to say that kind of thing. And again, through it's just part of your day, it's part of your routine. You're going to remember these words. These words are important to you because it's what you do as part of your day. And you're going to remember them because all the time you're going to be saying them. So I agree. I'm now becoming a fan of reading out loud. I've just started doing this and now with this book that Janos and I are reading. But I think talking to yourself. Again, same thing as ChatGPT. It's this resource that's always available to you. You can always
Right.
talk to yourself 24/7. So I think people don't just talk out loud and talk to yourself. It works the tongue, the thing we were just talking about earlier. So I think talking to yourself is definitely an underrated habit that people don't do enough of.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's true as well. Um, what time is it over there in Australia, Robert?
It's now 11 p.m.
And what time is it over there, Philip,
It's a
in the
9
US?
a.m.
Okay.
It's good that we could
So,
all find a time that we could all speak to each other that work for
yeah.
this
Very easy.
communication around the world.
So thank you. Thank you very much, guys, for shaping the future of learning Polish. And it was really great. Thank you, and see you in the next one.
Thanks.
See you, Phil. See you later.
Yep.
Uh,